There comes a moment, quiet, unnoticed, when the soul simply stops running, not because it has arrived, not because it has won, but because it finally understands. There is nowhere left to go. For years, perhaps lifetimes, it has chased something unseen, a perfection, a peace it could never quite hold, a feeling that maybe once brushed past it in youth, and it's been pursuing the echo ever since. The world encourages this chase. It calls it ambition, growth, healing, purpose. But beneath all those noble words is the same exhaustion, a running away from stillness. And one day, the soul feels the futility of its own momentum, like a wave realizing it cannot outrun the shore. That's when the silence begins. Not the silence of defeat, but the silence that comes after understanding. You can hear it in the way thoughts begin to soften, in the way desires lose their urgency, in the way memories no longer demand attention. It's strange at first, this slowing, this gentle unwinding of everything that once mattered, because for so long, identity was motion, doing, fixing, searching, becoming. To stop feels like dying, and in a sense, it is. It's the death of the striving self, the self that thought it could find salvation in effort, in explanation, in becoming someone. But peace doesn't come as a reward for running fast enough. It arrives when you no longer need to move, when you sit and feel the breath move through you without purpose, without story, and realize it was always there, always breathing you, even when you were too busy trying to breathe life into your plans. Outside, the rain begins to fall, soft, unapologetic. It doesn't try to fix the dryness of the earth. It just falls. It just is. And something in you recognizes that rhythm, the quiet inevitability of being, the stillness that has always been waiting underneath the noise. Most people fear this moment, because when the soul stops running, everything it was running from finally catches up. All the unshed grief, the neglected tenderness, the faces of those you loved and those you couldn't. They appear in the silence, not as ghosts to haunt you, but as mirrors, reflecting everything that was left unfinished inside. You begin to see how much of your life was built not on love, but on avoidance, not on faith, but on distraction. And that realization doesn't hurt, not in the way pain used to. It's quieter. It's a kind of sorrow that doesn't demand tears, only acknowledgement. You sit there, listening to the rain, feeling the fire breathe behind you, and something opens, a space where everything is allowed to be, even your mistakes, even your longing, even your fear. The soul stops running, not because it becomes pure, but because it finally makes peace with its own imperfection. There's a strange beauty in that acceptance. It's not dramatic. It doesn't feel like revelation. It feels like rest, like returning to a home you didn't know you left. And maybe that's all peace ever was, not an achievement, but a homecoming. You look back at the years behind you, all the striving, the wanting, the endless cycles of hope and disappointment, and you don't resent them, because now you see they were necessary. Every step, every fall, was the sound of the soul learning what it could not become. The running had a purpose, just as the stopping does. The movement was a prayer, and this stillness is the answer. The fire crackles softly. You can hear each raindrop touch the window, like time itself slowing down to listen. There is no hurry anymore, no urgency to explain or to fix. The story continues, yes, but without the noise. The world still spins. People still chase their meanings, their heavens, their loves. But you sit quietly, knowing that the only thing that ever truly mattered was the awareness behind it all. It's a humbling realization to see how much of your life was spent chasing what you already were. You were always whole. You were always enough. But you had to run yourself to exhaustion to finally feel it. That is the paradox of awakening. It arrives only when there's nothing left to seek. You can almost smile now, not from joy, but from recognition, from the soft humor of it all, the cosmic joke that you've been running in circles around your own center. The rain continues, steady, eternal, and for the first time in a long while, you don't wish for the sun. You don't wish for change. You just listen. Because now, silence is enough. And that is the beginning of everything that lasts. There comes a time when even longing grows tired, when the endless reaching, the grasping for meaning, the hunger for peace, simply dissolves. Not because the soul has found what it was looking for, but because it no longer needs to look. It's strange, isn't it? We spend decades chasing stillness, and when it finally stands before us, it feels unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, like a forgotten face that once belonged to us. At first, silence hurts. It presses against the edges of thought, reminding us how loud we've become inside. We think the noise was life, but it was only movement without rest. Now, the soul sits down, not in defeat, but in surrender. There's no victory in this moment, no enlightenment glowing like fire. There is only being. And being, as it turns out, is enough. The rain outside softens, each drop tracing its own quiet path down the window. The fire cracks, not for warmth, but to remind us that sound, too, can be gentle. And somewhere within the chest, a pulse slows, as if the heart has remembered its own rhythm after years of running to someone else's. We thought peace was something to earn, a prize for the worthy, the disciplined, the healed. But peace has no conditions. It never asked for us to be ready. It only asked for us to stop resisting. There's a curve most people never see. The curve where striving bends into stillness, where effort dissolves into presence. And when you stand there, you realize the finish line was never ahead of you. It was beneath your feet all along. You begin to see that forgiveness is not an act. It's an atmosphere. It fills the room when you stop holding your breath. You forgive your younger self, not because he deserves it, but because you finally see he was never the enemy. He was only scared and tired and human. The soul does not speak in words. It speaks in the quiet between them. It whispers not what to do, but what to become. And when you listen, really listen, you realize it has been calling your name in every moment you thought you were lost. Now the world feels slower, not smaller, just softer. You walk, and every step feels like returning. You breathe, and it feels like being forgiven for existing. And when you look at the people you once resented, you don't see their faces anymore. You see their fear, their longing, their childhood still trembling inside their grown bodies. And somehow, you love them for it. Age brings a kind of mercy that youth could never hold. You begin to understand that the purpose was never to win, or to fix, or to shine. It was to dissolve, to melt back into the great quiet from which you came. And yet, it isn't death. It's not an ending. It's a homecoming. When the soul stops running, it doesn't fall asleep. It wakes. It feels the pulse of life in everything. In the rain, in the wood's slow burning, in the sound of your own breath echoing in an empty room. You begin to see, this stillness was never waiting for you. It was waiting with you, all along. And maybe this is what peace truly is. Not the absence of noise, but the recognition that you were never apart from it. That even the chaos had its own rhythm, its own strange grace. That nothing was wasted. Not the pain, not the longing, not the nights of aching silence. Everything was part of the journey back. There's a kind of sadness that doesn't wound. It opens you. It humbles you. It makes you grateful for every fragile thing that ever touched your life. Because now you see, you were never supposed to hold anything forever. Only to love it while it was here. The rain outside begins to fade. The fire turns to embers. You close your eyes, not from fatigue, but from peace. The world feels vast again, and in that vastness, you sense yourself, not as a name, not as a history, but as something wider than all of it. The soul, now quiet, does not ask what comes next. It doesn't need to. Because in this silence, you finally understand. There is no next. There is only now, and the deep, endless return to the place that never left you. And so, the story ends where it began. With you, sitting by the fire, listening to the rain, and realizing you were never running. You were remembering. There's a quiet hour, after the soul stops running, when the world feels almost too still. The kind of stillness that makes you realize how loud you've been inside all along. It's disorienting at first. You listen for the usual noise, the self-criticism, the endless future planning, the rehearsed memories, and find only quiet. A strange, honest quiet. It feels almost empty, as if something vital has gone missing. But what's missing is the struggle. And that absence feels foreign. Because for so long, you've mistaken tension for meaning. You've confused movement with purpose. You've believed that to rest was to give up. Now, you see how deeply that belief has shaped you. How you built your identity around resistance, to boredom, to vulnerability, to silence itself. You can almost feel how the mind begins to fidget when there's nothing to solve. It tries to recreate the chase, to invent new purposes, new enemies, new wounds. But the soul, having stopped, no longer plays along. It watches with compassion, but does not move. It lets the mind spin its small circles until the energy runs out. And then, there is stillness again. That's when the first real peace arrives. Not the imagined peace, not the one promised by gurus or books, but the living peace, the one that simply is, without definition. You sit by the fire, listening to the rain, as if it were speaking a forgotten language. Each drop is a word, each pause, a breath. And for the first time, you hear the rhythm behind all things. It's the rhythm of acceptance, of life being exactly what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. You begin to understand why peace feels so strange at first, because it strips away everything that once made you feel alive. The excitement, the drama, the highs and lows, they were noise, yes, but they were yours. And without them, you feel naked, exposed, like a landscape after the storm. Quiet, but uncertain what to do with the silence left behind. You start to see yourself differently, not as the one who must fix everything, but as the one who must see everything. You realize that so much of what you called life was merely reaction. You were reacting to the world, to pain, to fear of being unseen. Now, without the running, you start to respond instead. You move from a different place, not to escape, but to express. Even your sadness feels different now. It's no longer sharp or dramatic. It's softer, like rain falling on soil that finally welcomes it. You see that sadness, too, was never the enemy. It was simply the soul's way of reminding you where it ached. And as you listen, you feel the ache begin to ease. Forgiveness appears, quietly, without announcement. Not the forgiveness you offer others, but the one you grant yourself, for being impatient, for pretending, for trying so hard to become something you already were. The fire pops softly. The rain slows. You look into the flames and realize how long you've lived trying to control what burns. But the truth is, everything burns, eventually. Every story, every identity, every illusion of permanence. And that's not tragedy. That's the design. When the soul stops running, you see this clearly. You see that loss was never a punishment. It was purification. It stripped you down to what could not be taken. And that small, unshakable core of being, is what peace grows from. You feel it now, not as an idea, but as presence. A quiet pulse beneath everything. You no longer need to chase meaning. Meaning comes to you. In the flicker of firelight, in the breath that leaves your lips, in the way the rain fades and the world exhales with you. This peace is not loud, doesn't shine, it doesn't try to convince you it's real. It simply waits. And when you notice it, it feels like coming home after wandering for centuries. You realize you were never truly lost. You were simply running in a dream, and now you are awake. But waking up isn't as glorious as you imagined. It's quieter, more human, more gentle. Because to awaken is to lose the thrill of the chase and gain the tenderness of being. It's to sit by the fire, watching your reflection in the glass, and recognize you are both the seeker and the sought. The rain stops. The silence deepens. You breathe. For the first time, you are not trying to get anywhere. And in that stillness, you begin to understand. This, right here, is freedom. Not the freedom to do anything, but the freedom from needing to.